similar to Bitcoin. Does Bitcoin break the power law at some point? I think the answer is yes. What's fascinating, you put our ability to compute on a log chart, it's a power law.
You mentioned it, power laws. I'm fascinated with this idea of diminishing returns. I also believe there's a possibility in the future that all these models do get broken to the upside.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it looks like.
In my opinion, they definitely get broken to the upside. But if you're hoping that there's more and more cycles, you're effectively saying, I'm just going to keep pulling the Band-Aid off, and clown world's going to continue to accelerate, and we're going to bridge the transition nice and slowly. If we go through hyper-Bitcoinization this cycle, right, you're effectively ripping that thing off, and there's going to be a lot of pain for whatever that time frame would be. Is that years? Is that a decade? Is the pain a year, or is it a decade?
Okay, we're live in Madeira with the one, the only, Preston Pysh.
Hello.
Welcome. How's your week been?
Incredible. This island is magical, right?
Yeah, that's one way to frame it.
Yeah. You see the pictures. The pictures do not do it justice. You got to see it with your own eyes. And the other thing, it's kind of affordable. Like, we were going out for dinners and stuff, and I was kind of surprised at like some of the prices that I guess I'm used to U.S. prices on some things, and I was pleasantly surprised.
And it's even better in the grocery stores.
Yeah.
We're picking up salmon, high quality steak.
Yeah.
In the grocery stores, it's very, very affordable.
Yeah.
Not quite Argentina or Colombia affordable, but it's very, very nice here. It's certainly cheaper than the West.
It's got just this movie, like you almost feel like you're in this European movie kind of setting of the landscape, and it's just gorgeous. Yeah.
Unprecedented. I put it up there amongst places like Machu Picchu. I've been to in Peru and Hawaii. And I think the east coast of California.
Yeah.
I love that drive.
The temperature, like, it seems like the climate's a little bit like that as well. It's pretty, it's not too humid right now. Maybe it is in other parts of the year, but yeah, it's awesome.
It is awesome. Speaking of awesome, you hosted a panel yesterday.
Yeah.
With some pretty big brains, if I do say so myself. You had Michael Saylor, Lynn Oldham, and Larry Lepard.
Yeah.
I believe the first question you asked Michael Saylor was kind of asking him, okay, how do you think that the fiat minds have kind of evolved their thinking since 2020, since Michael began buying Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I might just flip the script and ask you, do you think many of these big Wall Street titans and billionaires are beginning to kind of change their tone on Bitcoin, especially since 2020, since Michael really entered the space and institutionalized Bitcoin to a degree?
I think for them, I think that the sheer influx of buyers into these ETFs in the first, how many days in are we? 47 days or something like that, is blowing their minds. Mm-hmm. And for them, they're seeing, because that's the world that they're used to, is like, hey, the S&P 500, SPY, or VOO, or any of the major indices that they all know really well and track, and they know what those flows are and those volumes are. And they know that those are the kingmakers on Wall Street, or some of those products. And now they're looking at this thing that they all thought was going to totally flop, maybe get $1 billion across all of them. Some of them probably were, snickering as they were like, oh, this thing's going to tame Wall Street. And then it's like, no, or Wall Street's going to tame Bitcoin. And it was literally the opposite. Bitcoin's showing how incredible it is. And so I think that sheer volume is causing them to have the cognitive dissonance situation where they're saying, hold on a second, like, what in the world is this? Let me do a little bit more research. And then the more they're digging in, I heard a comment yesterday that BlackRock was having an institutional day where they were educating people, every, Wall Street, large institutions in the room. This is like recently. And they were providing education on Bitcoin. And the person said, the thing that blew their mind is they were literally using the charts that all of the Bitcoin maxis and the people that, are doing at-home podcasts or whatever have been sharing on Twitter. You now have BlackRock presenting these charts. And not only that, in these presentations that I think lasted 8 hours that day, the BlackRock event, they were having a deep conversation about how Bitcoin is not wasting energy. It's actually looking for wasted energy to use and finding efficiencies. And so that it's one of the strongest, like, these are panels and like presentations that they're providing BlackRock.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of people, a lot of whales. When I say whales, from an institution standpoint, that are getting, and I think we have just kicked off. Michael made the comment on that panel yesterday. It's the start of the Bitcoin gold rush that's probably going to last for the next 10 years, happened right now this year. So yeah, bring it on. Unfortunately for them, most of these coins are already spoken for, and most of these coins are spoken for by people that have deep conviction and probably don't plan on putting them back onto the market for a very long time. But we go down how many 8 digits past the right side of the decimal point. So there's plenty to go around, just maybe not the amount that they would like, but
the only variable is price.
There's plenty of liquidity, right? And it's just got to adjust the price to
satisfy that demand.
That's right. So buckle up.
So I think the fact that BlackRock is holding this kind of 8-hour conference about Bitcoin now, a month after the ETFs have launched, is a really big signal that potentially, I don't know what's going to happen in the short term, but maybe the flows aren't going to slow down as much as Wall Street expects. Because I've been watching Eric Balchunas, the ETF expert, so to say.
Yeah.
And he's been very surprised that the Bitcoin ETFs have continued to see like record volumes.
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 weeks in.
It's blowing their minds.
It is.
Yeah. And I think the thing too, if you talk to anybody that's, that understands that really well, like Eric and others, James is another one that's covering it a lot. They'll tell you that the flows that you've seen to date are mostly just retail flows, because a lot of it hasn't even been turned on for institutions yet, and like that's happening in the coming months. And then like Michael started talking about the lending and the custodial ownership, that they're not going to be rehypothecating it, and they're going to be standing up derivatives on top of it, and what that's going to bring to the price. Things are going to get really spicy. Yeah. And I'm not saying in a bad way. I'm just saying it's a network effect. It's just yet another network effect that's opening up these substantial tranches of capital that can now kind of plug into the Bitcoin network.
Yeah, well framed. So, I think one of those tranches of capital that hasn't been able to touch these ETFs yet is coming from Vanguard. Because they famously said, look, we're not going to offer Bitcoin products to our clients. We hold $6 to $7 trillion of assets, but forget it. We're not offering Bitcoin. Yeah. I saw you put out a pretty interesting tweet this week when the CEO, Tim Buckley, resigned after 33 years at the helm of Vanguard, the world's second largest asset manager in the world. I think he said something along the lines of Bitcoin has fired its first CEO. Yeah. I want to talk a lot about game theory today at the corporate level, the nation state level, but let's start with game theory at the asset manager level. Yeah. Vanguard CEO stepped down. Do you think it has anything to do with him having a bad take on Bitcoin and Bitcoin ripping by 50% in the next 4 weeks? Yeah. I don't know, but what else would it be, right? I don't know, but everything that I'm seeing is if you asked the common person off the street, especially, Bitcoiner, we had no clue who the guy even was, but boy, after he took a stand, everybody knew his name. From a social media standpoint, I couldn't even imagine how many times his name was mentioned in the past 40 some odd days versus any period before that. I bet you if you were able to take a reading from the data on the social media, it'd be off the charts how much his name was mentioned in the lot. And then all of a sudden he retired. So for me, it's pretty obvious that it was Bitcoin that caused it. Now you have Edward Jones, Penny Pennington, who's the CEO of Edward Jones. If you're a Bitcoiner and you want to, post something about, a company, Edward Jones, not allowing and here's the crazy part. They won't even allow you to buy MicroStrategy at Edward Jones, right? Like, it's the censorship. It's not just of speech. It's, no, we don't like what you're owning, right? How sick is that? Yeah. It's insane. So, hey, start tweeting it at Penny Pennington. I'm sure she's not on Twitter, but you can tweet at Edward Jones and give him a piece of your mind, just like all these people did with Vanguard. I mean, I saw more logos of a sinking ship in the last 40 odd days
with a Vanguard, with people changing Vanguard to whatever they want, as far as, you know, how disastrous of a decision that is. I don't understand it. I think it's humorous. I think they're, you know, just self-selecting. And hey, that's, if there's one thing we've learned cycle after cycle, you always have these people that, you know, have their opinion, they get wrecked, and Bitcoin is a teacher of lessons if you want to listen.
It's a great way to frame it. It certainly is a teacher. Yeah. You mentioned their financial freedom. Mm-hmm. And I think an area that you've shown a lot of interest in recently is essentially teaching yourself to become a lawyer via ChatGPT. So for those who aren't aware, Elizabeth Warren has, she's never been a fan of Bitcoin, and she's trying aggressively to pass a bill in America that would make it very onerous to self-custody your Bitcoin, run a node, and, you know, have one of those dangerous self-hosted wallets. Preston, do you want to tell us a little bit more about why you published an article on this topic and the kind of ammunition that you're giving the Bitcoiners to kind of fight this battle?
So once this was put out, so when you look at the way that the U.S. Legal system works, this was, you know, coming out of the president's cabinet, right? So this isn't a congressional push. This was the FinCEN piece. It's coming out of the executive branch, and so they published this document. It's going to go over to FinCEN. After they have to put it into the public record, they say, this is what we're going to do. What's everybody's opinion, right? And they have to allow the public to post their thoughts and opinions on whether it's constitutional, whether it's not, and anything impacts that it's going to have. They pose all of these questions, you know, in the proposal, like all the laws that they're going to be using, and they're leveraging the Patriot Act to do this. But they put that out there, and then they're just going to pass it, right? And it's going to become, you know, active. And then the way that the system works when it's coming through the executive branch like that, through the FinCEN, is if it's unconstitutional, or if you as a company felt violated by what we put into place, well, then you can go get a lawyer, and then you can go to battle, and then you can potentially change things through the legislative process, right? What's great is I can help that company out. Like, let's say you're the company in 2 years from now that's like dealing with this FinCEN, that they enacted. You can go back to the public record and you can say, look at all these comments of like this thing that I am battling with. Like, the public was telling you this, but you still passed it. And so then that gives what I was really doing by writing all that up was I was arming a lawyer of the future with talking points to prove that all of this was actually presented to the government and to strengthen their case as they bring it to the government. But what's sad is, like, we're talking about, of course we're talking about governments, we're just talking about just like an administrative do loop of just nonsense and confusion and time suck and capital suck and everything, right? So my intent, so it was like, all right, well, what would it cost for me to have like real lawyers like dig into this and provide a response? Like, what would that cost for me to do that? It'd be about $500,000 to have a lawyer actually respond to that proposal in detail. $500,000. So, you know, that's a lot of Bitcoin. So, you know, I'm looking at that. I'm looking at just levering technology, and I'm saying, hey, I can take this document, this FinCEN proposal, I can plow it through artificial intelligence, and I can help me figure out where there's all sorts of constitutional breaches. I can also use it to figure out, well, what existing case law proves all these constitutional breaches. And even using AI, I mean, it took me probably a good 3 weeks working on it every single day to like piece together like a real deep, thoughtful, highly documented through all the case law that's previously existed that addresses each one of the constitutional breaches that were in that specific FinCEN proposal. The thing that was really upsetting to me was you watched Elizabeth Warren lever the Wall Street Journal with a false article that was actually that was referenced from another news source that was totally made up and easily debunked through chain analysis that debunked it. But that was used as a free and open market, free speech article that then she wrote a memorandum with all these people that signed it that she sent to the president that this is all within like a 2-day window, right? So none of this happens in 2 days. This is all orchestrated. It's all coordinated together. But it made it look like it was all the Wall Street Journal wrote this piece, right? Lo and behold, the same day I have this thing signed by all these senators and representatives that Bitcoin and crypto is bad, right? And then the FinCEN proposal literally came out the next day. And let me tell you, it would have taken months to write this FinCEN proposal. So it was like bam, 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 all within like 2 or 3 days. So it was all preemptive. It was all coordinated. The irony as they're going after mixers, right, and the whole ecosystem at large, the irony is, I want to say the month before they were saying that Hamas was using crypto to fund Hamas was the talking point, right? And with that, the impetus for all this FinCEN proposal. The irony was they put, I think, $5 billion or $6 billion on a military aircraft and threw it in and flew the cash into Iran like the month before, right? And so here they are talking about, and that, obviously that wasn't brought up, right? But how could I even audit what that number is, right? And the irony is in all of her letters and these documents that came out, they were saying this is the number, and then chain analysis said no, actually the numbers are this because we have all these public ledgers and we know exactly that it was $450,000 and not 100. I think the number she threw out there was from the Wall Street Journal was like 120 million, right? And it's like, not only is your numbers 0.3% of what you claimed in this false article, but you sent $5 billion, right? Which is how many magnitudes higher than the 120 million. Like, these numbers don't make, but when you write them down and you figure out as a percentage, like how grossly different these numbers are, they sent 5 or 6 billion to Iran, which is funding Hamas, if you even want to go down that path, which they want you to, and I'm not going to waste my time. It's sick. So like all of it's just deeply sick, and thank God, and this is what I would encourage people with all this. This is too long of a response for this specific question, but this is what I would encourage people to do. Harness technology, right? Going and pricing somebody to go do that work for $500 million has just been dematerialized down to some Bitcoin psychopath that's just a little motivated and just like wanted to put in a little work and like put something out there. And I mean, that FinCEN response, I think we had over 1,000, I think it was 1,000 people took the time to go into the public database to respond to FinCEN, and they were just pulling all of the stuff that I put into that response. I think we got over 1,000 more people that put in, which is, let me tell you, for a public response to some FinCEN proposal, it has to be one of the highest responses for something like that. It was awesome.
Technology is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Speaking of technology, there's been a lot of talk about technology coming to Bitcoin in 2023. We have the rise of Ordinals and all of these tokens and these BRC20s. I'm not going to lie, I honestly didn't pay any attention to it in early 2023. I just thought, okay, it's all noise, it's all NFTs. I like to look at things with a conspiratorial lens at potential attacks. And I honestly ignored all of it. And I didn't really start paying attention to Ordinals and start following the money until you did a podcast with Bitcoin Mechanic. And you guys were talking about mining centralization and you know, what could an attack on Bitcoin look like? I would love your thoughts. This interview with Mechanic was a few months ago now. How's your thinking surrounding Ordinals evolved, and do you see any risks there that a lot of Bitcoiners could be overlooking?
I think that we have certain rules that Bitcoin has the set of rules. You can either follow them, and if you don't follow them, then you're not going to get in a block, right? The creativity that a person can do to right into each one of these blocks. If you want to put, a bunch of cat pictures in the blockchain, you can do it. You're going to pay a lot of money to do it. And I think that with time, I think a lot of that's going to work itself out, just because like once people are truly using Bitcoin to move billions of dollars per transaction, because you have large institutions that are trying to settle, it's going to crowd out a lot of that noise naturally. That doesn't mean that there might not be some bad actors that are trying to create churn and make it difficult for people to run a full node, and some of those talking points of more of it being an attack vector. But they're obeying the rules. And so when I'm looking at that, I'm saying, all right, Luke, what can you actually control? Okay. If you come up with a way that you think that you can maybe crowd some of that out, or the bad actor portion of it out, and you can propose that as a soft fork that you can gain consensus across the entire node network, and I agree with it. And if you think you can do it, well, that's a lever that you can actually pull, and that's something that needs to be discussed. Whatever that actionable change is, that's what needs to be discussed. I don't have the technical chops to go in and be able to define very clearly what a proposal for that would look like, and what it would cut out and what it would include. But I think what I'm talking about is the framework, as people are thinking about what their opinion is, not my opinion, but what their opinion is. They've got to understand that in order to do something about it, because you can't do anything about it right now. So it's almost like, oh, I don't like that there's clouds out there in the sky right now. I wish they weren't there. Well, wish harder. They're still there. All right. And I think some people are just like yelling at it as if they can change it, and as if they're going to do something about it, and they're not proposing anything actionable. And so that's where I would like to focus the attention. What is your actionable steps that you would take to change it? And then not only that, how are you going to go about gaining consensus across the node network to change it, right? And then the third thing would be, what are the ramifications of your change? What risks do we have to be concerned with your proposed change? And the education, the discussion around it is vital and important. I can't propose the solution. I don't think that I can speak intelligently on it, so I can't do that. But hopefully I can provide a framework for how I think people need to think about it constructively, if they do want to do something about it. Or if they don't, then I think Bitcoin's still going to be pretty A-okay. I mean, there's 2 megabyte blocks. My node is doing fine. If I have to move any type of reasonable amount of money, the fees are not pricing me out at all. So I'm not too concerned about it. Yeah.
I'm not either. I think discussion and education surrounding the topic is pivotal.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there was a lot of good discussion surrounding Ordinals in early 2023.
Yeah.
There's nothing that really interests me anyway.
Yeah.
Especially on the big podcast. So I think more education, more discussion is a good thing. I'd love to hear what the viewers think of Ordinals. Let us know in the comments down below. Are they a risk? I don't know. Are they innovation? Is Bitcoin builders a good thing? I don't know. We'll ask you guys. But I think the idea of a soft fork is also an interesting idea as well. And I think people in Bitcoin are becoming more and more gun shy of any potential changes.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Taproot was a pretty long process. And
well, we're having this discussion because of a soft fork, right? And I think so people are like, okay, so hold on now, like maybe, and I don't think we moved too fast on the last one. I think we had a pretty good idea, for the most part, what was going to happen. But I think people are looking at like, hold on, like just slow down. Like there's no emergency. Like we don't have to make a decision today. We don't have to gain consensus today. Let's test whatever idea, percolate up. And there's obviously a lot of ideas and a lot of people proposing things. And I personally haven't heard anything that I'm like super excited about. I'm just,
neither have I.
Yeah. And that, in a way it has incentivized Lightning building and infrastructure growth because of the higher fees. And this is the thing that I find so amazing about Bitcoin is if that was being attacked, it's harnessing the attack, the Aikido in it is harnessing that attack to build out and make layer 2 that much better. And I think that's exciting. I think that just shows you that we're dealing with something that's like almost organic, right? It's almost like it's a living thing, the way that it's adapting to its environment to live and grow, which is just strange, right? Like a little weird, but
it's growing fast.
Yeah.
I think one of the charts that show how rapidly this thing is growing is the hash rate.
Yeah.
I've been interested that this past 24 months has kind of been the first bear market where the Bitcoin hash rate hasn't had this big major correction.
Yeah.
We saw the correction in, I think it was March 2021 when China banned Bitcoin mining.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But then we had that next run up to 69k and we had that big correction down to 15k. The price went down, but the hash rate didn't.
Yeah.
I've been screaming at people to pay attention to it.
Yeah. Some of it is Moore's law. So like if it'd be really interesting if you took and it's hard to do this because you don't know what the actual composition of miners, like the type of miners that are mining and what efficiency each one of them are. There's people that try to guesstimate that. But if you could actually just understand how many watts as just like a nominal value has come online. You heard, I think Michael said it on stage yesterday, that he thinks in the coming 4 years, or it was pretty short, not a long time from now, that he sees the nominal wattage almost like plateauing, because the efficiency as you're replacing rigs or you're bringing brand new rigs online, but you're watching the hash rate go parabolic, right? But it's actually human ingenuity and the efficiency that we're able to make guesses, the entropy. Our ability to create entropy is getting more and more efficient in the processing. So I don't know where that slows down. I mean, what's fascinating, you put our ability to compute on a log chart. It's a power law, and it's similar to Bitcoin. Does Bitcoin break the power law at some point? I think the answer is yes. On the compute side, does it happen at some point? I don't know. I don't know, because it's getting to probably a much deeper question of like how the universe works and what is the universe as far as like consciousness and stuff.
And now you're opening up a rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I mean, we can go down that path, but it gets very esoteric real fast. But yeah, really
fast.
Yeah.
You mentioned it, power laws. I'm fascinated with this idea of diminishing returns. I've got a view that I think most people are too bearish. I also believe there's a possibility in the future that all these models do get broken to the upside. Yeah. I'm not sure what it looks like.
Yeah.
Do you have any
They definitely get, in my opinion, they definitely get broken to the upside. Yeah. But hopefully we go through.
I don't want it to happen either.
I have two. You know, there's two arguments to it. If you just accelerate and rip the Band-Aid off and we get over to that, there's going to be a lot of pain that's endured for a short amount. It's the classic pull the Band-Aid off, right? Yeah. Are you just going to rip it off and scream for a couple seconds and then everything's better? Or are you just going to slowly, excruciatingly pull the thing off and like every hair on your arm is like coming off and you're like, ah? Because people would say that going through the wish for more and more cycles, because that's all these are. These are hopes and dreams and wishes. You can't control this, right? It's going to do what it does. Yeah. But if you're hoping that there's more and more cycles, you're effectively saying, I'm just going to keep pulling the Band-Aid off and clown world's going to continue to accelerate and we're going to bridge the transition nice and slowly. Other people, if we go through hyper-Bitcoinization this cycle, right, you're effectively ripping that thing off and there's going to be a lot of pain for, whatever that time frame would be. Is that years? Is that a decade? Is the pain a year or is it a decade? I don't know. But I think that whatever Bitcoin chooses to do through human action, right, is going to be some array of those two outcomes. And if it happens really quickly, I think we need to be prepared for some pretty painful societal issues if it would happen really quick. Yeah. and I think if it goes really slow, I think that it's just going to be, we're just going to see the erosion of, many cultures because of it. Yeah.
Like inflation's already picking up big time around the world. The way I view it, I think the longer these cycles go on, I feel like the more pain these emerging market countries are going to see with inflation, like Argentina.
The ones that don't pull in El Salvador, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea who might be, like if you're looking around the world, are there any countries that stand out?
Oh, I mean, El Salvador stands out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the challenge is when you're looking at this, because of the, Alex Gladstein's book and just all of his talking points between the World Bank and the IMF and that coordination to just get developing nations to get more indebted and be, servants to the G7 with their monocrop type, harvesting of those societies. And then them just becoming more and more reliant on these ever growing, never to be repayable loads of fiat debt. That's really hard to break out of without like insanely bold leadership. I think for some, especially for the one that takes the first step and does it so boldly, I find it interesting that you have a country and you have a company that have both demonstrated it with absolute conviction, right? Like when you look at MicroStrategy and what they did with their treasury, Michael didn't have to like literally do the whole treasury.
Yeah.
He could have taken the 500 million when he put this on. He could have done 10% in Bitcoin. He could have done 400 million in S&P 500 type things, right? And he could have let that grow, and it would have been demonstrative, but it wouldn't have been obvious. Like at this point, it's obvious, and it's going to be really obvious in the coming 2 years. You had a very similar thing happen in El Salvador, right? And so, what I guess I'm concerned with is it takes such bold and courageous leadership to take such a bold stand against institutions, the IMF and the World Bank and all the other ones that are NGOs that are connected to all that stuff. It's just the incentives are insane. Yeah. But because we had two leaders step forward and do this, and they've demonstrated what this looks like, I think it might actually accelerate others to make similar bold calls, especially because they made it through the whole cycle. If he would have backed out or kind of changed his position when it went down to call it 15,000 USD a coin and said, okay, all right, this was a mistake, or he was left office and didn't have the time to see it through the next cycle, I think it might have been harder on the country front. But other countries are taking note because of that bold leadership. So it's important.
I agree. I think they are. And it's crazy how quickly times change. I remember at the bottom when Bitcoin was at like $15,000, there were people genuinely talking about the possibility of Bitcoin going to 3K and Michael Saylor being liquidated. Yeah. I think he had to he made a tweet or a statement about it, kind of like reaffirming, okay, I don't get liquidated unless it's at like $3,000. But there was serious talk about Bitcoin going there. Yeah.
Well, and I think that was just for one of he had one loan that he had borrowed against his Bitcoin, and I think that was the one that would have been liquidated. And it wouldn't have taken I don't think that would have taken the company down. No. Yeah. So there was a lot of like horrific takes on that one when the price was down, and that don't understand corporate finance, they don't understand accounting, they don't understand that the company was still making a product that was banging out 75 or 100 million a year. So
there was some terrible takes on it.
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time. We've been going for nearly an hour. Yeah. Finish with a few rapid fires. So I actually interviewed you remotely. Yeah. Nearly a year ago to the day. So it was, I think it was in December 2022. Okay. It was near the bottom.
Oh, was it?
Okay. It was very close to the bottom. Yeah. We were both bullish.
Oh, yeah.
There were three big themes that stood out to me in that podcast. Okay. One was we were both watching the coins being ripped off the exchanges. Yeah. And that was standing out to both of us. This was before the banking crisis in March 2023.
Oh, okay.
And you said the printer is coming.
Yeah.
You said the printer is coming and yield curve control is coming.
Yeah.
Something else you said was inflation is not transitory. It's going to be more sticky than most people think.
Yeah.
And the narrative at the time was, the Fed's defeated inflation.
Yeah.
They've done great.
Yeah.
But I think those are the three topics that stood out to me.
Yeah.
Are there any of those that have most interested you over the past 12 months that you want to...
Well, the yield curve control did happen. And people would argue that, but it happened through the backstop facility.
Yep.
Yeah. And the only people that benefited from the yield curve control were banks.
Yep.
If you were an everyday citizen, you didn't get the luxury of depositing your bonds at the Fed, and even though they were down 20% or whatever it was. So they fixed the price on the bonds by allowing them to be deposited like that, and that's yield curve control. So now what's going to happen next? So they're turning the facility off, right?
1 month.
Oh,
it's very soon, very soon it runs out.
So maybe they are going to turn the facility off. Maybe you have a cascading impairment scenario similar to Silicon Valley Bank play out with some of these regional banks that might happen. And they have no choice but to backstop commercial real estate.
Yeah.
So they're going to say, hey, you own this property that's down. It's been marked down 70% from where it's at. Give us the certificate. You can put it on deposit here at whatever value that you last paid. Right, we're not going to let you you don't have to mark it down. You can just put it where you purchased it at 100 million, and if you had to sell it, it'd be worth 30 million. Don't worry about that. Just put it on deposit here, and you can treat it as if it's still worth 100 million, just like they did with the bonds. They're going to step into the commercial real estate market. They're going to probably do the same thing within the year, I would say. And so now they're doing yield curve control for the bankers that debt is representing the property. And here's all you need to know from a Bitcoin standpoint. It is the more they have to hold that legacy system together, the stronger Bitcoin gets. It's that easy. Yeah.
Anti-fragile.
Yeah. They're getting more and more desperate.
Yeah, and you can see it.
Yeah.
Making a big pivot.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by YouTube. I love YouTube.
Okay.
I love watching your YouTube videos. You started podcast before many people.
Yeah.
I forget the exact year. We talked about it in the previous conversation, but it was early.
Yeah, the YouTube channel might have been like 2012 or 2011 or something like that. Yeah, and then the podcast started 10 years ago. Yeah.
I keep telling everybody, especially in the Bitcoin space, I don't think it's too late to start another Bitcoin podcast. And lots of people think it is. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I want your thoughts. If you had to start again, start fresh, would you have a different strategy for podcast versus the YouTube? Do you think there's one you'd focus on more? Any big tips or...
Well, the thing that I think people are attracted to is so I like to think that people listen to the show because I've compressed information for them. And similar to AI, right? AI, you feed it a bunch of data, it compresses it down into a model, and you can ask it any question and it pumps something out. People are going to want to listen to your show if you're creating content that's having them think like, oh, I never thought of it that way, right? Or that's an interesting vantage point, or you have this ability to kind of frame something up. And I would argue you kind of can't do that unless you have exposed yourself to just an enormous amount of data, an enormous amount of information that has a lot of breadth. So I think that's first and foremost. And you know what it is, at its core, it's proof of work, right? Like, because you can't expose yourself to a lot of information or a lot of work unless you have done the work to do it. And so I think that's a real competitive advantage for anybody that wants to create media, because what you're really trying to do is make a larger amount of information available in a shorter amount of time. It's an efficiency flow of data and information.
I agree. So, I think anyone can get in front of the camera and just get bullish for 10 minutes. And
yeah.
But I think there's a lot of complex ideas out there, and not many can synthesize those and maybe frame those in a different perspective.
Yeah.
Now, the last question I asked you in our remote interview in 2022 was, what are your 3 best book recommendations? Now, I read one of those books. I read Consciousness in the Brain.
Oh, did you read that?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely loved it.
Yeah,
especially
good.
for an overthinker like myself.
Yeah.
It's definitely helpful.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you the exact same question again. 1 book or 3 books?
Oh, jeez.
I know it's a difficult question.
I'll tell you one that I read recently that, I rarely, after finishing a book, will read it a second time. And I would say that there wasn't much that I learned in this book that I didn't already know or have read somewhere else. But the way that the book organized what it is that I thought was true and what it is that I hold very dear to, like who I am as a person, was compressed in such a thoughtful way and organized in such a thoughtful way that I read it as soon as I finished the book. I literally just read it again, and it's called The Kabbalion.
Okay.
And I can't recommend that book highly enough. Like, it was really, really good, really good.
I'm opening up my Audible app as soon as I get out of this conversation.
You'll thoroughly enjoy it.
Okay, thank you so much. Preston, any final comments for the people you don't think we hit on today? And let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm active on X. I always mess up and say Twitter.
You and I both.
Just at Preston Pysh, my first and last name. I have a podcast, We Study Billionaires, and I was joking with Knut this morning. I said it's we study, if you have 1 billion sats, 10 Bitcoin, we're studying you.
That's the new
billionaire.
Yeah.
You got 10 sats, we're studying you. 10 Bitcoin, we're studying you. But yeah, that's where people can find me, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you so much. It was honestly a pleasure.
Yes.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
So that is a wrap of our full in-person discussion with Preston Pysh, talking about all of these Bitcoin cycles and models that could potentially break in the future. If you want to learn a little bit more about that topic, you're probably going to love our recent interview with Samson Mao. We're going to pop a link to that video up on screen somewhere around there. That's going to take you straight to that video. But if you've seen that video, you might like a recent live stream that we did early in the week, looking at the maths behind BlackRock's recently discussed secret closed door meeting about their optimal Bitcoin allocation. We're going to put a link to that video up on screen somewhere around there. And with all that said, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys in the next video.